renounce, because he got confused when Krishna in 2nd chapter, verse number 49, he said that all the abominable activities by engaging in devotional service. And then after that, he again said fight, right? Without attachment. So Arjuna got confused whether he is supposed to do something or he is supposed to not renounce everything. And then the Krishna is describing that actually we should not renounce immaturely. We will be mithyachara if we do that. So instead, engage in devotional service in the Nishkam Karma Yoga, basically. Offering with work without attachment for the sake of duty, and as Nishkam Karma, not wanting any kind of fruitive result, but just work dutifully. And the last verse that we discussed last time was that, okay, you are a Kshatriya, so you should do the Kshatriya duty, even though it looks like it's faulty, instead of doing some other's duty with perfection. Because your nature is Kshatriya, it's better that you do your own nature duty. So now from 36 to 43, it's a very, very nice section. Beware of lust and anger. So Krishna, Prabhu, you want to say something? Somebody was saying something. So 36 to 43. So maybe we can read the translations. Someone would like to read?
I can read, Mataji.
Yeah.
So 36 to 41, you said, right?
43, all.
Oh, okay. Arjun said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjun, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is all devouring sinful enemy of this world. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness become covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity, bewilders him. Therefore, O Arjun, best of the Brahmins, best of the Bharats, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is superior than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, Almighty Arjun, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust.
Yeah. So here, so in verse number 35, Krishna said that you should do your own dharma, your own duty of a Kshatriya and householder, right? So, okay, Arjuna thinks, okay, yes, from today onwards, I am going to steadily do my own duty and control my attachments and aversions, right? I will act only according to the scriptures. Then he is thinking, but I am not able to keep up after a while, right? We try to do, okay, all of us know that we should get up early, we should chant our rounds very attentively. We know very well, but we are not able to do it. So Arjuna is also saying, I am not able to do it. What's going on, Krishna? And then as a sincere student, instead of keeping those thoughts and questions to himself, he is asking Krishna, okay, what is it that actually impels me to not do my duty but engage in sinful acts. Means sinful acts means when we are not doing our own duty and doing something for our own enjoyment, that those are sinful acts. Even unwilling, even though I don't want it, all of us want to get up early, chant nicely, always avyarth kalatvam, want to engage every moment in the service of the Lord, but it doesn't happen. So Arjuna is asking for the sake of all of us that even though I'm not willing to do those sinful activities, but still it happens. What is it? Why is it so? Right? So basically the original nature of living entities, that we are part and parcels of Krishna, and originally we are completely pure and spiritual, but and completely free from all contaminations. But when we come in contact with material nature, then sins happen without hesitation, because when the senses come in the contact with objects of senses, we want to enjoy, right? And even though we don't want to, it happens. Oh, I'm sorry, I started speaking. Okay, anyway, we linked the sections now. So somebody wants to say something about these verses before I speak. Go ahead, please.
I probably have a little bit to say about verse 39 and its last part, that thus the living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered in his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. I wanted to ask you, so here it says that lust is never satisfied and it burns like fire. Does Srimad Bhagavatam ever say somewhere that, you know, for some time you can stop like this impulses of the lust if you just give it too much of something, and then, you know, you kind of get bored with it and you move on?
So you mean that for some time you fulfill the lust and then give it up? Is that what?
Yeah, something like this. I think somewhere, does it say somewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam or not?
Actually, even in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, we will hear, like, you know, that the people, when they come to this Jnana Kanda, basically, because we try to enjoy in material life, right? And ultimately we feel that we are not able to, we get frustrated. So in one of the purports in 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada speaks in the purport that one gets frustrated and then they take to this Jnana marg, basically impersonalism. Basically, we get frustrated because like you see, if you see the hippies, basically, so what had happened that time, because they had wealth and all, but they were not able to be satisfied, and then they tried to go in a different direction of this hippie movement, and, you know, taking drugs and trying to find that enjoyment in it, right? And people, in one of the, I'm not remembering the number of the verse, which one, where Srila Prabhupada writes that, yes, there could be, but generally it does not happen. That is what, like, we also see that this yoga ladder, it is Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and then Bhakti. So, but there is a danger in that path, because what happens is that one gets so much engrossed in enjoyment that one keeps finding, like, that is the Vedic, like the ladder part, the yoga ladder. If one goes into that Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga kind of, in the Karma Kanda rituals of the Vedic scriptures, if one tries to follow that, one entangles in that fruitive activity so much that it is hard to come out of it. That's why Krishna in here, it says that the lust is never satisfied, which burns like fire. So then he says that that's why we should cut it off in the very beginning. Because you see, like, example that many times I hear from everybody, all of you must have heard, like, you know, a drunkard, a person who start taking alcohol, basically, first time they have hesitance, and first time they don't even like the taste of it, right? Many times you may have heard that from people. So first time they won't like it so much, they are hesitant to take it. Even smoking, same thing. But then second time they will have less resistance and less hesitance, and then again third time they are completely free, and then they just start liking it, right? Smoking as well as drinking. Because what happens is when we do one sinful activity, then actually that karmic reaction, because of that we get more inclined to do sin more and more, and then we will get more and more reaction. So it will be very difficult to come out of it. That's why Krishna says to cut it off in the beginning. But there is a chance also that one gets frustrated and then they take the path of impersonalism. That is what Srila Prabhupada writes in one of the purports, and it's there in Bhagavatam also somewhere, but I'm not able to remember where it is.
So firstly, when we talk about lust basically it's a desire to live for oneself, the desire not to serve, but to
enjoy, desire to enjoy,
and take more than needed, and everything which comes from this desire to enjoy.
Yes.
So as far as we have the proverb that the fire cannot be stopped by putting the woods into it. So here, as far as I understand, sometimes, let's say the person likes, I don't know, cakes. And one day he eats so much of the cake, I don't know, 2 cakes or something, that he cannot look at this cake for, I don't know, for the next 5 years or how many years. So in that way, we can say, oh, just eat as much as you can, and then you will be bored with it, or you will be like distressed.
Go ahead.
So, but the thing is that, okay, the person stops one desire, but it doesn't mean that the lust disappeared. The lust just shifted from one object to another. You develop a kind of like a disgust to that one thing. You have bad samskaras towards this cake, but for example, then you start eating gulab jamun. Like you cannot eat cakes, but now you're overeating gulab jamun. So, for example, many cases people stop smoking, but this lust doesn't go anywhere, so they gain weight. They
eat something.
Yes, and the thing is that because the root, the principle of this lust remains. And this samskaras, that once upon a time I was eating that cake and it was good, this samskara still remains. So
because it becomes into vasana, because it gets, like I was saying, the impression gets like our inclination becomes too much, because of we are getting the karmic reaction at the same time, right? So it increases our inclination for doing more sin. So what happens is initially that person has the taste for eating sweet, so it becomes like samskara, right, impression. And then mind's function is to accept and reject, right? So because this material thing, when we do anything for our sense enjoyment, it has a limitation in it. We will get satiated at one point of time, but if we do something for Krishna, we will not be satiated, right? In Srimad Bhagavatam, recently we were reading in the 18th chapter itself, the sages are saying we are never satiated hearing Krishna Katha. It is unlimited. So, but in material things, because when we are doing it for our sense enjoyment and Krishna is not pleased with it, so then what happens is we feel that satiation and we want to move it to something else. The tendency to enjoy, the impressions become more and more ingrained in our heart, and then it is called vasana, stored impressions of enjoyment. And then it is stored in the memory. So this is the cycle of karmic activity, how it happens. And then it becomes kalpana, means all the time the person keeps thinking, oh, how can I enjoy? Now I can't enjoy cake. I don't like cake anymore. I don't like gulab jamun anymore. So maybe let me try rasgulla or rasmalai, something, right? So then imagination happens, and then it comes into urge, like, oh, I really want to enjoy it, I have to do it. And then people even maybe do robbery and become thieves and all that, right? And then it becomes vikara, means bodily transformation. And then what happens is sankalpa, complete decision. Okay, I am going to do it no matter what, right? So that is just, this is the cycle that is defined actually. Yeah. Yes, Gayatri Mataji, that
So
is.
unless we address the root
Mhm.
cause of this
Mhm.
lust, it will just
Yeah.
keep on bugging, and you know,
Yeah.
we will cut it from one side, it will
Right.
spring from the
Right.
another one. And
Right.
the only thing is to cut it down, I mean, to dissolve it. The only thing
Mhm.
way to dissolve it is to through chanting and engage in Krishna service.
Devotional services, basically, meaning making Krishna the center. Okay, I like gulab jamun, but if we try to make it for Krishna's pleasure, offer it to him, then what happens is we will not be lusty about it. We will be thinking of Krishna's pleasure instead of our pleasure. Like, for example, Dhruv Maharaj's story, right? He was attached. And then what happened is he meditated according to the direction of Narad Muni, and then his lust for having the kingdom was gone completely. Only thing he wanted it is to serve Narad Muni and Krishna, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is what this, that is why Krishna is saying here that we should actually try to cut it in the beginning only, like the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the, so. And then he's also telling, okay, where does this lust reside, right? It resides in all these our subtle body. It resides in mind, intelligence, and the senses, the gross and subtle body it resides in, right? Through them, lust covers our real knowledge. Then we forget actually who we really are. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, verse number 60 to 63, the cycle, right? When the senses contemplate on the objects of senses, then what happens? That greed, let me pull up the verses. We should actually remember that cycle all the time, because that's how. And then, because if we remember, then we can guard against, right, falling down. So verse number 62.
Well, the thing about this cycle is the easiest to stop the cycle at the very beginning. If it's like
Yeah.
already in the
Yeah.
middle, you will
Yeah.
kind of already
It's
have
hard.
reaction.
Yeah, it's hard. We are all. So while contemplating on the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops. So see, lust is how we are getting lusty. The senses falls on the object, rasgulla, gulab jamun, or whatever, and we start thinking about enjoying it, right? So, but if we remember this thing, then we can cut it off in the very beginning. Oh, no, this should be first offered to Krishna. Let Krishna enjoy it, then I can have it, right? Like that. And from lust, anger arises. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So very, very important point that we need to curb it in the very beginning, because otherwise what will happen is our memory and our knowledge will completely be bewildered, and we will again fall down. So that is why Krishna is saying, therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharata, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So very, very important. And we are like these examples that Srila Prabhupada gives about, the drunkard, a thief, actually, thief also, right? In the beginning, that they may have hesitance and fear, but they don't want, once they do it, second time they will have less fear and less hesitance. So because what happens is, the moment we choose to do such activity, the reaction, the cycle of action and reaction keep happening, and our proclivity to do more sins increases. So it's again very important to cut it in the beginning. Yeah.
One time I heard how someone described this verse 62-63, that, for example, there is, a beautiful car passed by. So, and, for example, the car is new, shiny, nice, and beautiful. So here it says that while contemplating the object of the senses, contemplating doesn't mean that you really need to look at it all the time. So the car passed by and the person starts thinking, oh my God, how it would be nice to drive this car, and how people look at me if I drive this car. They would probably think that I have status or money or something. So person doesn't even look at this car, but in his mind he's already starting to think how would it be nice to possess the car, how to how to have it. And by thinking, he feels good and he's getting attached to this idea. So when and that's how it's, for example, when he gets it, usually he becomes disappointed or angry because it's not as good as he imagined. Usually he understands that, okay, there is maintenance, and then he sees this same car many other people have, so it's not so unique anymore, so he gets angry. And or if he doesn't get it at all, he gets angry even more. And the whole point is that the easiest is just when the car passes by is just to cut yourself off, like to so don't even go there, don't even go in that direction.
So just like Ajamil, he just saw the prostitute, right? Once, even though he was a Brahmana, he was such a nice Brahmana, he was completely engaged in helping his father and doing his Brahminical duties, and just one scene of prostitute he saw and then just gone, right? So, and this lust and wrath, actually both that Krishna describes here, when we use it in Krishna's service, then they become our friend instead of our enemies, like Hanuman, right? He got angry and he burnt whole Lanka in the service of Lord Ram, right?
Yes, and I think Prabhupada writes that nothing in this world can come by itself, that there is always something in spiritual world that here gets twisted. Prema in spiritual world, which,
is lust in this material world, Lust is the perverted reflection of love, basically, actually. So what is lust? Love is for Krishna. When it is employed for Krishna, then it is love. But if it is for my sense enjoyment, that is lust, right? So the desire is there also, and it's there in Krishna. The whole complete spiritual love is there in Krishna, and the desire is also there in Krishna. But for us living entities, it becomes perverted to fulfill our own sense enjoyment, and that's why it is actually lust, because we are part and parcels of Krishna, right? Yeah. And then when he compared the three, like when the knowledge is completely covered, then it is like the trees, basically. When ignorance is tree and the passion is womb, the embryo covered with womb, and the goodness is like the smoke covering the fire, because still we can see the fire, right? But in trees, they have least consciousness, basically, right? And it is also compared to cleaning the mirror, dust covered on the mirror. Yeah. And what is the way out? Under able guidance of in this human form of life, we can conquer this enemy lust by cultivating Krishna consciousness and under the guidance of a spiritual master, right? Automatically, that is Krishna system. In 4th chapter, in the beginning, we will see, and the continuation from this 3rd chapter will be like that only. Yeah. Yeah, anything else, anybody?
Mataji, can you repeat that which the three
Okay,
things?
here. So here, fire is covered by smoke, as the mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, and the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of lust, right? So this one is fire covered by smoke, is that goodness, right? It is the consciousness is the best in mode of goodness. And then mirror covered by dust is the passion one. And then embryo covered by the womb is ignorance. So, but in the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives other examples basically. Helpless situation like that of a covering of the tree. So that is covering, like the tree is also how the knowledge gets completely covered, right? So that is here in the purport. Srila Prabhupada describes here. Embryo by the womb is an analogy illustrating the helpless position for a child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of a tree. So basically, yeah, so these three are compared in the here. So let's see, where is Prabhupada saying fire covered by smoke? Yeah. So here, when lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be a little perceived because we can still see the fire. In other words, the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly. He may be likened to the fire covered by the smoke. Although fire is necessary where there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. The embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to bird and beasts, and the smoke covered fire is compared to human beings, right? So this is because human beings have the most developed consciousness, and then the birds and the beasts, and then the trees.
Yeah, thank you.
We are compared to those. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport gives us more details, so we should read purports too. So what is the way out? Following Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a spiritual master. And 39th, we already discussed at detail. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, like criminals shackled in a prison, those who disobey God's laws become bound by the shackles of sex life. And then also he says, lust is a symbol of ignorance because it increases our duration in the material existence, right? Symbol of ignorance. It increases our duration in material existence. It may give so-called enjoyment and happiness, but actually it is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer because it is keeping us in this material world, which is actually totally devoid of the real bliss that we get in spiritual world in Krishna service, right? So best way is that we should cut off in the very beginning, right? Residing places, we know the senses, intelligence, and mind, Krishna told. So we should cut it off in the very beginning. Mind, senses, and intelligence. actually. So conquering, so then Krishna is telling in 41, yeah, regulating. So what do we do? By regulating. So in the very beginning, we should cut it off by regulating the senses. So what actually curb the from very beginning means, does it mean from childhood or as soon as we see any manifestation of lust? So when we begin Krishna consciousness, so we should begin it in the beginning, like Prahlad Maharaj says that we should begin it even Kumaram Achrit Pragyo, right? In 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj is telling his classmates that in the very beginning, we should curb it off. We should engage in the devotional services process in the Krishna consciousness. And in 42, he is giving the hierarchy that actually the senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. And the super soul is even higher than the soul, right? So if we engage the soul in the service of the Supreme Lord, Prabhupada writes in the purport, then what happens is all other subordinates, namely intelligence, mind, and senses, will be automatically engaged. So, so actually, because some people say, oh, like somebody is so strong-headed that they can, control the senses, right? But when we engage in devotional service of the Lord, which is the soul activity, and soul is the highest, then if we go in the proper hierarchy, if we engage in the constitutional duty of the spirit soul, then all this mind, intelligence, and senses will completely be controlled and engaged, right? Yeah, so we should understand our constitutional position. Actually, that will be the real solution. So what is that? That we are not this body or this mind or intelligence, right? And they are the complete, actually, sitting places of lust. If we act on the spirit soul level, then we will be able to control that. So we should strengthen our mind by the use of intelligence. And how can we sharpen our intelligence? By the study of scriptures, actually. Study of scriptures and hearing Krishna Katha helps sharpen our spiritual intelligence, so which will direct the mind. So then, otherwise, the intelligence gets bewildered and gets trapped by the mind, basically. The senses, they are strong like serpents, but when engaged in Lord's service, they become harmless like serpents with broken fangs. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport of 42. So actually we know that from this hierarchy that Krishna is giving, that the soul is actually the master of intelligence and mind and the senses, right? Still, unless it is strengthened by association with Krishna in Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of falling down due to agitated mind. Yeah, so very, very important that we need to actually sharpen our intelligence and engage in the constitutional duties of the soul. Yeah. So the last verse again, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So what is that? Study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, which is Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer the mind, conquer this lust, basically. So it's hard to fly when something is weighing you down. Like if there is a rock bound to the kite cannot fly, right? So don't let the enemy of lust weigh you down one more lifetime. And how to conquer this enemy, Krishna is telling in this verse number 40 to 43. So identify the enemies. He is giving the strategy, hiding places, and then arrest the easy points to enter the enemy's place. In 41, he is saying that by regulating the senses, like symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, slay the destroyer of knowledge, right? Yeah, master of hierarchy, soul, in here he is describing, and then attack the enemy by connecting to your master with transcendental knowledge. And in chapter 4, Krishna is going to give us transcendental knowledge. All right. So we kind of did some little summary type of this chapter. So if anybody has something to say, please go ahead. Haribol.
Mataji, so the takeaway is just meaning the verses we studied is just the Krishna is putting so much emphasis on lust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how important it is to curb, and the example Gayatri Mataji spoke about is also very nice and very actually practical actually. And that, okay, yes, I want to do what you are saying, Krishna, but something feels like is forcing me to not do it, not do my duty. I know it is right to do, but I can't do it. And what is that? That is that lust, our desire to have sense enjoyment. And how we can curb it? By actually in the beginning itself cutting it off. And how will that be? If we are engaged in the proper hierarchy, if we are engaged at the spirit soul level and under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically the essence is that engaging in devotional service, and you know that higher taste verse of second chapter, verse number 59, if my memory is correct. That one, and that
Vikramanas.
Tenira Harsha Dehinam, right? Rasopi version, this one. So higher taste. So we have to develop that higher taste in serving Krishna, engaging all our senses, subtle and gross in the service of the Lord. Vishaya vinivartante niraharshadehina rasavarjam rasopiyasya param drishtva nivartate. So that without higher taste, we will not be able to actually, move on. And association of devotees, like-minded devotees, means what we want, we have to have association of those who are doing those things, right?
Yes.
Otherwise we will not. Alone we cannot do it. Unless, I mean, there could be some exceptions, but generally it's good to be in the right association.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Anything, devotees?
I don't know if I was also to add something. I'm
Yeah. Go ahead,
surprised,
please.
not surprised, but I am surprised or amazed that in order to conquer lust, we do not have other instruments than those instruments which we use to give into lust, like our mind, our senses, in our intelligence. These are all instruments, and we use these instruments either for one to give into or to fight it.
Yeah.
Like you don't have
Yeah.
to imagine anything
Yeah.
different.
Anything different? No. Same things only we have to use. No, but like Prabhupada says, no, that we don't have to change anything, but we continue doing same activities, just that we have to change our consciousness, right? Yeah, go ahead, Gayatri Mataji.
Someone told me like a proverb: if you are in some bad situation, look at the door which you used to enter it, and just get out with the same door. Like just, you did certain actions to get into certain situation or to acquire that lust. And in order to get out, to conquer it, just look at your actions, what you're doing, in that way, by regulating, by the regulative principles, you can get out from the same door which you used to come inside to get into this situation.
Yes. Yes.
And also talking, when you mentioned, if you do not have higher tastes, sooner or later, for example, sometimes you can tell yourself, okay, do not think about this car, do not think about this beautiful car. If, for example, that day you had enough sleep and you did not fight with anyone, you did not lose your energy, for example, you ate well, you didn't eat too much, too little, in that moment, because you have so much resource, you can tell yourself, don't think about that car, and you will not think. But at the other day, if you did not have enough sleep and you were fighting with someone and you used so much energy, for example, on that, and you don't have enough food or you have too much food, you cannot tell yourself, don't think. And it's not gonna just, you will fail at that time. When you don't have enough resource, you will fail unless you have higher taste, and this higher taste is the only thing that can help you.
And it will develop by practicing. Basically, there is no shortcut to it. By association of those who have it, because like we are known by the company we are in, right? So means whatever type of people we are with, we will develop those things, right? Yeah. So this higher taste is practice. There is no shortcut to it. Begging for the mercy and engaging ourselves in devotional services. All right. So anything? Yeah, thank you so much, Gayatri Mataji, Bhagavati Prabhu, and Shefali Mataji. After a long time, we see you today. Thank you all very much. So today is Monday. So tomorrow and Wednesday we will do our Bhagavatam. And then we will start a new year next week, chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita on January 3rd, right?
January 3rd, yes.
Hari Bol Mataji.
Hari Bol.
I was just thinking something about what Gayatri Mataji was saying, how you're using the same senses, whether you're giving into the senses or restraining, then it just reminded me of the example that Srila Prabhupada gave, that if you have too many milk products, you use the yogurt. So it just reminded me of that.
Yeah. I was also thinking of that.
Which example? I don't know. Which is that example? Can you speak about that example about yogurt?
Yes. So when you drink too much milk, you get diarrhea, right? To get rid of diarrhea, we have to eat yogurt, which is also a milk product. In Bhagavatam, in the beginning of when Vyasadeva is dissatisfied, so there also that example is given. Narad Muni tells him, whatever you used to write Vedas, now use it to glorify Krishna. Then you will be satisfied. And he instructed him to compose Bhagavatam, which is complete glorification of Krishna. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And wish you a very happy New Year. I don't think we will have any, I mean, during that weekend time, we don't have anything. So, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai, Vancha Kripa Sindhu Bhai, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hari Hari Bol Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki